So how are these two laps that we drove at, let's say, more or less equal speed and completely fair conditions, because we did the same amount of laps, now I did way many more. So we sent the data to a friend of mine who's a race engineer, Andrea Quintarelli. Sounds Italian because he is. And he found some differences in our styles, and maybe it's interesting to just have a quick look at how we arrive at the same lap time in a different way. So we have a speed race here. The red line is you, Jarno, and I'm the black line. And we can already see that in turn one. I think you were a bit too eager on the throttle. Maybe you touched the grass a little bit, and you struggle on the exit there. And here the delta, we can see that you lose on the exit, but then you gain again, because here you lose speed in the next turn in Villeneuve. I'm much more abrupt on the steering, and I think I struggled with the car. I wanted to brake hard and enter, and then it just understeers.
Yeah, so the issue I had was of course default setup. I think so, at least. I hope you were on that one as well.
Yes.
I think one issue I had was that the car really snapped very aggressively on the exit. So it was kind of balanced on the entry, which was nice. But then halfway through the corner, it snapped every time very aggressively. So I just tried to get off the brake as fast as possible, so the center of mass would move backwards. And you can really see that in the data. However, I didn't quite build up the feeling enough to be comfortable on throttle, and you can see that in some of the exit. I just couldn't pick up the throttle that well, because I just kept having the rear snap away. As I said, I only did like 8 laps, and the first 6 I spent crashing. So
driver's excuses.
Because I tried to, of course, in the simulator you can straight away be really aggressive and test the limits, and it doesn't matter if you crash. So one thing I noticed as well, my preparation to the lap was a little bit better, because you can see into turn one I'm like a few thousandths ahead. Yeah. And of course this doesn't matter that much, but in esports where every thousandth of a second counts, that can make the difference. I think it's like 5 thousandths of a second.
Maybe it's just like at Imola the straight isn't straight if you just are as precise as possible, a straight line, and maybe that's a few thousandths or something. Yeah,
and of course if you start your lap you can swerve over all the way to the left, because the start line is really late on the straight. And run some extra distance, which of course is not ideal on your actual lap, but as preparation you have more meters to create speed, so that way you carry like 0.01 kilometers extra into turn one, but it makes a difference in the end. And on the exit in turn 1, 2, you can see I get a moment, which cost me almost 1/10, I think so.
At the end you're 1/10 ish, yes.
Yeah, and that's
which you make up completely braking for Villeneuve.
Yeah, I gained a lot of time in the chicane. I think that's kind of the story of the wall lap, where in Villeneuve I had so much more confidence on entry. I carry all the speed consistently because I'm trying to get off the brake once I feel like it's going to rotate, and then I kind of sort it out on the exit. But
but again on the exit there you struggle a bit more. I found with this car, because I did, let's face it, a couple more laps, that a little bit of patience from brake to throttle sort of settles it down. If once you've applied too much throttle, there's no way back and it becomes nervous. But if you wait a couple tenths, then it sort of accepts it a lot better. Of course, I had a lot more laps to figure that out. And then the very fast Piratella, that's such a great corner, 6 gear, and you don't understand how much downforce is needed to take that in 220 kilometers an hour. It's really cool corner. Such a shame they didn't go there this year, by the way. It would have been great to see these modern cars there, I think. But you carry a lot more speed there.
Yeah, it looks like that's 10 kilometers more. Something like 10 kilometers.
Indeed, yeah.
And I think once again it's just confidence on corner entry that I seem to have more. You just couldn't get back on throttle in time to make up for it. And the thing is as well, in such a high speed corner, if you slow down too much and you instantly need to go to full throttle, the balance shifts a lot to understeer, which then makes you send wide, of course. So high speed corners you need to be careful on the brakes, because if you tap them too hard the rear snaps away, but then at the same time you also have to go really early back on full throttle, which then sends you wide with understeer again. So sometimes you have to do a little bit less, I feel like, in high-speed corners to get more out of it.
Yeah, I think that's my problem. I try too hard, if I brake a bit too hard, and that actually maybe also in this case in my car I think creates some understeer as well. And then, yeah, I've noticed that the sooner I can get on the throttle, the better it felt to me. But I also just slow down way more than you. So yeah, that's interesting. And Aqua Mineralis, that's an amazing corner. You arrive 7th gear down. If we had the G-forces, our neck would hurt just from the compression and then up that hill. I think it's a great corner. Not in the least because I do seem to carry a bit more speed in this case. But you see, you really have a sharp dip here. You slow down and you're fast again. I'm sort of more, I have a bit of more of a round curve there, or I'm sort of at a higher speed, higher minimum speed, but I have that speed for a little bit longer, and you have your low speed, and then you nail it again.
Yeah. So of course it's uphill as well. So I struggled with the throttle application in the other corners, and then because it's uphill, the balance shifts so much faster to oversteer, which makes it even harder if you're a little bit insecure on throttle. So I'm not sure if I had a snap, but I do remember I spun I think 3 or 4 times in that corner because I kept having the big snaps of oversteer.
You had a moment on exit there, I think, yes. And then towards the slow chicane, that's not as nice in these stiffer cars as it used to be. We're quite equal. My minimum speed is maybe a little higher, but look at the exits. We are effectively identical there. Although you were a bit more busy, we will see that maybe in the video as well. Because you really sort of threw it at the lap. You were quite aggressive, which was cool to see. And on exit as well in 3rd gear, of course, you're over the curb and the traction isn't always perfect. So is that something you approach a chicane like that? I always hate the chicane because I always know it's one of those turns that you're never gonna get identical lap after. I cannot get it identical lap after lap. And it depends so much how much you hit the inside curb, where you arrive at the 2nd curb, and then you don't want to go over track limits. How do you do that? Do you focus most on the exit, or what do you sacrifice, or do you just find a way to be consistent, or is it even hard for you to be consistent? In general, not necessarily in this car, this lap.
Yeah. I in general, I really like chicanes like that because it's so hard to get right. You need to hit the curb in the right angle, and even if you do hit it in the right angle, you also need to carry a lot of speed to carry it into the next exit as well. And at the same time, you also cannot carry too much because otherwise you are too far over to approach the 2nd one correctly.
Well, you do a Leclerc who a couple of years ago went too hard into the chicane there and didn't come out in facing the right way. Yeah,
exactly. It's a complete balancing act, which makes it so hard, of course. And then car setup makes it even more interesting because of course a few clicks on anything makes a huge difference in a corner like that.
So then we're out of the chicane. We're almost equal, and then I always have a big problem. I know we arrive at the final 2 corners and I see my delta and I go, oh, this one's gonna be it. I went off in the last corner, or the one but last corner. I never spin. Final corner, 4th gear exit, never spin unless my delta is negative. How do you keep it calm knowing that, oh, this could be the one?
Take a deep breath and send it. But yeah, I think you always have to attack it as much as possible because whenever you take it a little bit easier, especially if you're up a lot, I feel like you tend to even faster make a mistake. Especially if you brake a little bit earlier maybe, then you have to come off the brake and you kind of lose the feeling. You probably don't get the rotation right and you easily lose so much time. So just have to really attack it, especially if it's a big braking zone. Attack the entry as much as normal. You can see a little bit more minimum speed, but I think my exit at the final corner was a bit worse.
Yeah, a bit worse. This downhill braking as well. So I always you have here you accelerate. You have like 12 seconds to question your ability. I do to survive the last couple of corners, and then it's downhill braking, and it messes with your head. Oh, what will the balance be? So I think that's probably a big difference between you guys, the pros, is that the ability to stay calm and don't think you can gain another half a second in those last 2 corners, but also don't play it safe by half a second, because then of course you're nowhere.
Yeah. It's downhill, of course, and then especially the apex, it dips away a little bit. In Rule F1 they have got brake migration, which then changes the brake bias depending on the brake pressure.
Yeah, so it moves backwards on entry, so it turns the car in a bit more, I think. Yeah.
So basically the more pressure you put, the more forward it goes.
Yeah.
And they can change this as well by how much it moves forward. Unfortunately we didn't have that on Automobilista, which makes it a lot harder.
Yeah.
Because you have to completely control the car just by your brake pedal. The exact amount of trail braking and turn-in is needed, especially in a corner like that where it dips away the apex, because if you trail brake is slightly bit too much and also are a little bit too aggressive on the progressive turn-in, then you easily lock up the left front and you just wash out with understeer.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to get right on Automobilista.
We're actually thinking of adding brake migration in a way, maybe. So, because I'm very curious what difference that would be. Because you feel like I'm looking for an excuse. I see my left front lock up. I think we need more physics features. This is not a driver error. But yeah, it is definitely a thing that they use in multiple racing classes. So the brake bias moving as a function of how hard you press. And of course, it changes the bias. If the rears only brake, you turn in and you get a big snap. If the fronts brake too much, then you lock up and you go straight.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big thing indeed. So we're pretty equal over the last 2 turns. Your accident again is a little bit messy, and then I keep my itty bit of an advantage. That is not due to doing 200 extra laps at all. I sort of keep that from exit of the chicane all the way to the finish of the lap. Well, I think it was interesting to have a discussion about like some of the differences in how you approach some of the turns and how we try to get the most out of the car. It was cool. It was interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely. Next time I'll try and beat you.
We can always do a rematch. I just need 400 laps.